All right, got to get the Facebook groups in here. Hopefully we can. I know we've been having some issues with it, at least the last few mornings. And Tuesday night, let's see if we can get a couple green check marks. There we go. Welcome in everyone to another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers. I am your host, Erick Trickel, and joining me as always is the one and only Lance Sanderson. Lance, man, last week was a busy week for you with the 4th of July and with what you do. Was this week any better? How you doing, man? You excited to get into this?
You know what? We have a fantastic topic, and I wish we had more time tonight because this would be like one of those true Dove Valley deep divers. Let's break this entire thing down. Erick did a lot of work on the backside of this. He showed me a bunch of this stuff we're going to be bringing to you. But before we get into that, doing good. You know, it's been a lot slower of a week. It's been hotter than the blazes of HE double hockey sticks up here in Wyoming, and it's been kind of rough. At least it's not go balls to the wall. You know how it is. Like when you do what I do, it's incredible. But with it being as slow as it is, it almost makes you more tired. Like you almost want that adrenaline rush of go. But where I'm at here on Friday night, I'm dead, man. But I'm happy to be here. It's always great to talk Broncos football with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. We finally have some nice weather. We had some nice weather last weekend, and it got kind of gloomy and everything. But it's nice weather. We're gonna pull out the squirt guns and water balloons as a family, and go over to my parents' house and have some fun in the sun and nice weather. So we're excited for that. But that's gonna mean we're got to keep this right at half an hour. It's not gonna be a situation where we can actually go after that. So basically, right at 30 minutes, whether Lance is talking or whatever, I gotta cut us off and get out of here. So make sure you guys get your questions and comments in before that. But before we get into this topic, and as you said, it is a good topic. It is a wonderful topic. And I wish I didn't have prior engagements to where we can really spend a whole hour on this. Maybe here we can dive into it a little bit more, later on, and down the road here, maybe next week, depending on, training camp stuff. Cause I think the rookies report on the 16th. So just a few days away. But it's a wonderful topic. But before we get into that, we do have some people in the super chat we got to say hello to. We have David Youngkin coming in saying, evening, everyone. Hope everyone has had a great day. We hope you've had a great day and a great evening, great morning, whenever you happen to be listening to this. For those of you who listen after the podcast, hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Ernie May saying, go Broncos country only. Paul saying, good evening, Erick and Lance and chat. We have Jermaine coming in from Syracuse saying, go Broncos. And Ernie Mays over on Facebook saying, hello, Erick and Lance. Go Broncos country only. Greg Smith coming in saying, good evening, Broncos country. And we have David Cromwell coming in with the $5 super chat saying, more than a third of Bo Nix's passes in weeks 10 and 18 were at or behind the line of scrimmage. Do the Broncos plan to be less dependent on screens this year? A good portion of those weren't necessarily screens. They were just those quick hitters to, let your playmakers go make a play. And, there was a lot of reasons for it. And I think that it just depends on what the looks that the Broncos get. They got a lot of looks last year during those weeks that favored those kinds of passes, and they were able to have success doing it. But they definitely do need to find more balance. Hitting those intermediate windows was an issue before that with Bo Nix. And they balance out to an extent, but still need to, balance out even more and fully, and maybe even get to that Bo Nix can not necessarily excel, but do well hitting those windows. So there's a lot of work to do on it, but it's just one of those things of Sean Payton's scheme as well. You're going to get a lot of those passes throughout the season, and it's very much dependent on what opposing defenses give you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question that I have in terms of Bo Nix and his development this season is how does he look in that intermediate area, 10 to 19 yards between the numbers specifically over the middle of the field. Last season, he did a really good job growing in that aspect, especially hitting the second and third window of crossing and in breaking routes. So to me, getting those pushing the football down the field a little bit more. And based on what Sean Payton likes to do with digs, crossing routes, mesh concepts, stuff like that, I think that's the biggest aspect of where I want to see Bo Nix be more consistent in his ability as a quarterback this year, not depending on the screens and the quick passes behind the line of scrimmage. And like you said, it's not just necessarily screens. It is the quick passing game, getting the ball into hands like Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, like guys like that. That's a big key here.
Yeah, so thank you, David, for jumping in with the super chat. We appreciate you. And David Kilgore coming in. It's been a while since I remember seeing David Kilgore in the chat.
Yeah, Dave, what's up,
maybe I've missed you, but I think it's been a while. But he's asking which guy will come out as wide receiver 2, and your guys' opinion. David, if there's more to that, feel free to let us know. I think the wide receiver 2 is between Devon Bailey and Pat Bryant. The edge goes Devon Bailey, but there's some mystery around this injury that he's dealing with, and Sean Payton got a little short-tempered about it. Expectations he'll be back early in training camp, but the doors are open for Pat Bryant to come in, and he's looked really good throughout the OTAs and minicamp. And if he can carry that in, it'll be hard not to look his way. So one of those two guys, but I lean Devon Bailey. I'm not buying the Marvin Mims wide receiver 2 talk that I think came from CBS Sports. I think they're the ones that started pushing this. Yeah. I'm not expecting a big jump in him as a wide receiver. I think he's might be a little bit more refined with his route running, but I still think he's going to be limited to a wide receiver. And I don't think Troy Franklin's going to make that jump to be wide receiver 2 this year. I think he can have a bigger role this year, but I don't think he makes that jump to be wide receiver 2. So Devon Bailey, maybe Pat Bryant being able to overtake it.
Yeah, I think Bryant's probably the one that like the dark horse candidate here, because Bailey with what he does as a consistent player, Pat Bryant brings a lot of that as well. And I think that Pat Bryant wins more with his catch radius and just reliability with his hands than Devon Bailey does. Bailey has a little bit more burst to him, but still, I mean, it's between those two guys. And Mims is the popular breakout star for the Broncos offense this season, according to pretty much everybody. I'm with you. I think more gadget style role. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but to me, I really like Pat Bryant and everything I've heard coming out, but it's between those two guys for sure.
Yeah. Todd Ossendorf saying, I heard Mims being predicted as number 2. I think it'll be Bailey. Yeah, I'm not buying the Marvin Mims stuff. As I said, most of it deals with his size. He doesn't have the size to be a number 2 wide receiver be that Z guy.
Yeah.
Slot, backfield, and plus both years, his production as that outside another boundary receiver wasn't great. Greg Smith coming in asking, who's the best running back for quick hitters out of the backfield? Your guess is as good as mine. We are unsure about what RJ Harvey offers as a receiver out of the backfield. J.K. Dobbins is hit or miss there. Jaleel McLaughlin, they don't really have an answer there. We still got to wait to see who that guy, which running back emerges as that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing here is going back to Jaleel McLaughlin. Got my names mixed up. He had 79 total yards on 24 receptions last season. He didn't show the ability as a receiver, as a true receiving threat out of the backfield. It was more check down, just go get a couple of yards kinds of things. So it's a huge question, big time question coming for this Broncos offense. It's another topic we want to get into coming into training camp too, by the way, just a little foreshadowing for DVDD here in the next couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. With training camp expected to start next week. I know one of the mornings, Nick and I, we're going to be doing a training camp specific one. I'm sure next Friday we're going to be doing training camp, talking about what's going on as rookies report. I believe on the 16th is what's been reported.
Yep.
So we're going to see about that. Todd coming in saying also there's hype about Troy Franklin. If Franklin has improved, he could still end up being an afterthought in this offense at number 5. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for Troy Franklin to improve. The route running, the nuance of route running, tracking the ball, the hands. There's a lot for him to work on, but I still think that there's a way for him to have a bigger role on this offense than he did last year. But as I said, and I'm not saying you're saying this, Todd, but I don't think that he's going to make that jump to be that number 2 receiver. I think at best you're looking at probably wide receiver 5 with the clear 4 ahead of him with Sutton, Bailey, Bryant, and Mims all being ahead of him. But Franklin's still going to have a role. And that's one thing with Sean Payton's offense. Those wide receivers 3, 4, 5, they're used quite evenly and have been throughout his career, unless he absolutely has a stud at one of those, which right now we don't know if the Broncos have a stud at one of those positions. But getting into this topic is one that, again, I'm excited about. It's one that I saw and immediately wanted to dive into. Have an article up on it on myhuddle.com. But Tom Blair of NFL.com, he went through and he took all 32 rosters and built the best 53-man roster. But he had some restrictions on it. Obviously, he had to come in under the salary cap. That was rule number 1. So you couldn't sit there, $279,200,000. That's the salary cap. He couldn't go over that. He used all cap figures from over the cap. And the other thing, and the more important thing, is he only allowed 24 players on rookie contracts. So 24 players, and it was split up. You can only have four first round picks, 4 second round picks, 4 third round picks, and only 12 players who were drafted between rounds 4 through 7. And then he said players set to play on the 5th year rookie option in 2025. So the 5th year options and undrafted players didn't count against his rookie cap, which comes into it. Now, before we really dive into this, I think it's worth what was so noteworthy about this is the Broncos had 5 players make this 53-man roster.
Mm-hmm.
That is the second most in the NFL behind the Philadelphia Eagles, who had 8. And I think all but one of the Philadelphia Eagles was a starter, which is absolutely insane to think about, and goes to show how much talent there is on that team. But the Broncos, of their 5, only one of them was a starter. I think it's a pretty safe guess as to who it is, right? No matter what, even if you're taking salary cap into it or not, the reigning defensive player of the year, he's a starter on it. You're going to get him on there. And what's good about this, and this is why I say, and I've said multiple times, if the Broncos want to keep their 4 big guys, Sutton, Benito, Allen, and John Franklin Myers, with contract extensions, they can do it. You can look at contract extensions like Patrick Surtain, new signings like Evan Ingram, Talan Huanga, even Brandon Jones from last year, DJ Jones extension. You can look at these extensions and how they're structured, and that's why I say they can easily do it, but the question is, will they? So, Patrick Surtain's extension, reigning defensive player of the year, he costs, what is it? I have to scroll down here.
I have it. It's $8.37 million this season on the salary cap. And the fact that the Broncos have the reigning defensive player of the year on this number is absolutely remarkable. You talked about the Philadelphia Eagles having, 8 players on this roster. The Broncos have 5. We talked about this last week, and it only goes to the news today of Ryan Pace, the general manager of the Bears, getting a contract extension. George Paton is doing one hell of a job building this roster out with young, talented players on cost-controlled deals. And you get a guy that's 16-35 over his first 3 seasons as a general manager of the Chicago Bears, and George Paton doesn't have a contract extension. We talked about it last week, dude. Like, seriously, what are we doing here? George Paton needs a contract extension.
Yeah, so there's not much to talk about with Patrick Surtain. Not surprised, as you said, basically $8.4 million against the salary cap. He is paired with Christian Benford, Cooper DeJean, one of those Philadelphia Eagles players in the slot. Then Zion McCollum, Tarheeb Still, and Marcus Jones are the backup corners. But hey, Patrick Surtain, he'd be a starter in this. Very easy and very simple. It's one of those guys that when I go through and I do this, and I'll do mine here in a couple weeks, and I'm sure we can make that into a topic or something, is I always peg certain players in and then build off of that. Patrick Surtain, cornerback 1, I'd put him in there. And I'd probably have my cornerback 2 be Derek Stingley. I would accept the costs and cut costs elsewhere to get those 2 paired up opposite each other if I'm building the best team, even with having to stick under the salary cap. Now getting to the other 4 players, and there's a couple here that we're going to go off the track of guys who didn't make it that should, but backup quarterback Bo Nix behind Patrick Mahomes. And this is one of those things where when you look at this, is there would have been a very easy way for Blair to cut costs at one place and then switch Bo Nix for Jaden Daniels. To me, I think it is pretty telling that he didn't do it. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and we kind of looked at the cost beforehand, is he has Micah Parsons as an edge rusher. You can take off Micah Parsons and put in Daniel Hunter or Trey Hendrickson and easily fit Jaden Daniels on there. And he actually makes a comment about Micah Parsons being one of those guys that he could look at moving off there. I think it's very telling, and I think it's a good sign that national media, a guy in the national media, didn't make that change with how easy it would have been for him to make.
Well, and even in his commentary, I'm going to read directly from the article here. Quote, as for the backup spot, I didn't want to settle for the kind of safe replacement level vet that so many teams default to when I could earmark a measly $4.2 million for someone who could actually, quote, win games if needed. To me, using one of my 4 first-round slots on Bo Nix is eminently worthwhile if it means safeguarding the super team against any bad luck with Mahomes as the starter. The big thing here, you got a national pundit that comes out and says a guy that can win games for you. You surround him with talent. Bo Nix has actually shown you the ability to go out there and win games with the talent that he brings. That, to me, speaks volumes in this process. By not going out to the guy that had one of the best rookie seasons ever, a guy that went to the NFC Championship game in Jaden Daniels, who has twice as large of a cap hit. he went with Patrick Mahomes and then Bo Nix behind him. That is like Broncos fans should be ecstatic with the way that is the contract structured, and the fact that outside pundits are actually willing to say that Bo Nix can go and win games for you if you need him to.
Yeah. And before we keep going on this, we have Peter Milton saying, hello, DVDD from Turkey. Hope you're having a good time there in Turkey. And he also asks, who has the best trade value of the players requiring big extensions? Nick Benito. I mean, he's a double-digit pass rusher. Granted, he has issues against the run. He was an honorable mention in the top 10 pass rushers that was selected by NFL executives, coaches, and scouts. He has the most trade value. And then probably, I don't think Zach Allen does. And it's simply because of how much dead cap Denver would take to move him. So it's Nick Benito and then John Frankenmeyers. David Kilgore coming in asking if there's very many Bronco players as Funko Pops. There are some. I know he's no longer a Bronco, but I know Jerry Jeudy has one. I'm pretty sure Russell Wilson had one. I have 3. Todd says he feels like it's more Star Wars than football. It is. Star Wars and Marvel is mostly what my collection is. I also have a personalized one sitting behind me that's of me that my wife got me for Father's Day.
It's awesome, by the way. It looks so good.
Which is my favorite one. But I do have 3 Bronco ones. I have DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, and Peyton Manning. So 3 former Broncos, I guess, would be the way to put it. But moving on in this, no running back men made it, and I'm not going to make a case for any argument for a running back to make it. But a wide receiver, I think this one was interesting. So he has Kevontae Turpin, $3.1 million of salary cap. You can save money here and put Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims is 1.655 against the salary cap. And part of his reasoning is what Kevontae Turpin does as a returner. Yet Marvin Mims is an all-pro returner in each of the last 2 years and has had better production as a wide receiver in each of the last 2 years than Turpin has.
Yeah.
I would save basically the 1.5 million, which I would use elsewhere, and we're going to get into that, and put Marvin Mims over it. I'm sure there's another wide receiver out there that I could make that case for as a great returner, good weapon on offense that's, still can save costs over Kevontae Turpin. But, this is a Broncos podcast. This is one where, despite my concerns about Marvin Mims as a gadget player, you can still find a way to use him with some of those other receivers that he has on it, with Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, Khalil Shakir, and Nico Collins. There's still a way you can use Marvin Mims as a gadget player on offense, but focus as a returner, all-pro kick returner, all-pro punt returner. I'm going that way. I'll save the cost.
I'm right there with you. And like you said, building the best NFL roster, you've got obviously the best receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, who works as a great slot receiver. Ladd McConkey works as a great slot receiver. Khalil Shakir works as a great slot receiver. You got Nico Collins, who is actually more of a boundary receiver. Like, the way he built this roster doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you're looking to find a gadget player that you can add into everybody and add even more speed to the wide receiver room, it makes a lot more sense to go with Marvin Mims, not only to cut salary costs here, but just the versatility that you bring to a player that can actually bring you something on the offense as a complementary skill set to the guys that you already have. Yeah. You can work him out of the backfield. You can use him as a coverage dictator, working in motion, whether it's rocket motion, orbit motion, or rocket to orbit motion. Like, you can do so many different things. Toss him the football out of the backfield. Let him use his speed and ability as a runner in space. Like, Mims makes way more sense than Kevontae Turpin, and I missed that. I missed that going through this exercise. Eric, that's a good shout, and I appreciate the hell out of that.
Now, we only have 10 more minutes. I do have a hard deadline for today, but we still have a little bit more to talk about. Tight end, Evan Ingram is one of the 3 tight ends that he has making it. But I would make a change here. I would cut costs here because, again, there is another guy on the Broncos that I think has to be on there. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But I would definitely remove Evan Ingram. He kind of conflicts with some of the other guys there. And you kind of touched on about the way he built this roster. Doesn't make sense. You can get, if you want a blocking tight end, you can make the case for Darnell Washington, which saves you money. Tucker Kraft, which saves you money, who still offers up good receiving ability. There's multiple other guys that you can go to at tight end here, cutting costs. Because, again, I'm cutting costs because there's a player in my mind that I think fully deserves to be on this team that's not overly expensive. You just have to save a little bit of cost, and that's Quinn Miners.
Yep.
And he has Dominic Pooney of the San Francisco 49ers as the starting right guard, who Dominic Pooney, he is basically 1.3 million against salary cap. Quinn Miners is 5.5. So you have to basically figure out a way to get 4.2 million saved up. Well, Evan Ingram to Tucker Craft specifically, that's saving you 4.4 million. That's enough to get Quinn Miners in there in the starting lineup. That would be Jordan Mayalta, Landon Dickerson, Zaw Frazier, Quinn Miners, Penei Sewell. That is a fabulous offensive line. You can do so much there. I moved Dominic Pooney over Tevin Jenkins as a backup. And then Tanner Bornolini, Nick Allegretti, and Zach Tom are the other backups. But I cut the cost at tight end. I cut the cost at wide receiver because I wanted to get Quinn Miners on this roster because he fully deserves to be on it. And I don't think there's any argument against that.
Well, and going back to the article itself, and like I just brought up with the wide receiver position, you have a bunch of players that work out of the slot very, very well. Evan Ingram, more of a power slot than true inline attached tight end. Like, where does he fit? Who are you going to take off the field over Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey to put Evan Ingram on the field? And this is no slight to Evan Ingram, who's a great player. You need another guy you can attach to the line of scrimmage, and Tucker Craft makes a lot more sense here. So that you save the money there. You get Quinn Miners on the field. You put a top 3 guard, either side, top 3 guard on the field over Dominic Pooney, who's a quality player in his own right. Like, that makes way more sense. And it also just shows the fact, again, George Paton doing wonders with the contracts and the ability to scout these players out and add quality players to this Broncos roster.
And Todd asks, if you really want the best team money can buy, then why not add Sutton? Because it's the best team money can buy while staying under the salary cap. And Courtland Sutton has a $20.2 million salary cap hit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
that's more than Justin Jefferson.
Yep, that's
for this year.
25.
So that's why you can't get Courtland Sutton on there unless you're really cutting costs somewhere else. And there's nowhere else that you really want to cut costs too much to get Courtland Sutton on there, because then you're overpaying for Courtland Sutton, so to speak. So it just comes down to the salary cap spot. And that kind of does it for the offensive side of the ball, getting over the defensive side of the ball. And again, apologies, we have to rush to this, but I do have prior engagements that I got to get to. Edge rushers, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Gregory Rousseau. That's your top 3. But Nick Bonito comes in. Nick Bonito does make it. Saved by the fact that he is on the final year of his 4th-year deal. He only costs about basically $5.7 million against the salary cap. Still cheap, a productive, a pass rush specialist in this instance for if you're building this team and looking at it. It makes sense. I think it's easy with the way that you've built it. I can make the case of maybe, cutting Mark Parsons from it again for a Daniel Hunter or Trey Hendrickson and then upgrading. But I think if you're upgrading Nick Herbig or Dietrich Wise, they're about $4.3 million against the salary cap combined. I would upgrade over both of those guys if I'm cutting Micah Parsons, not Nick Bonito, who I think in this instance would be a fabulous number 4 rusher behind Myles Garrett, Gregory Rousseau, and Trey Hendrickson or one of those other guys if you're removing Micah Parsons.
Right, and part of what that Blair said was that the coverage versatility with reading here with Bonito, Parsons, and Herbig. I mean, you've got, if you're going to put like a Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator here, a guy that likes to drop his edge rushers into coverage, you got guys at the 2nd and 3rd wave of this pass rush that can actually drop back into coverage. I mean, Nick Bonito has 2 interception returns for touchdowns to his name this last season. So it makes a lot of sense to put him there. The high-end pass rush versatility that he brings as a quick one-step explosive player, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to put him there. And like you said, last year of his rookie deal, just shy of $5 million against the cap. Why not put him on there? It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Todd was sort of asking about Jahdae Barron. He hasn't signed his contract yet. He's not eligible.
Yeah.
And even then, no rookies made it.
Quickly. So on Jahdae Barron, are you concerned about that?
No.
About his contract being signed yet? I'm not either. I just wanted to throw that out there.
It's come up like almost every single show for the last month. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it'll get done. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets done next week. Yep. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, at some point.
Yeah, rookies report on Wednesday. It's probably going to get done by that point.
Yeah, same with RJ Harvey. I'm not concerned. So no rookies made it. Part of it is you want to see what they have before you throw them into this. But it doesn't help that he just hasn't signed his contract yet. On that note, getting to the final player here, no interior defensive lineman. When you look at the way this is built, salary cap cost, that was a big reason. The most expensive salary cost on the defensive line is Jalen Carter at 5.9. They have Poona Ford at $5 million. all the rest are under 2 million. The other 3 players that they have, it's hard to adjust that for guys who are over $10 million without, again, making major cuts elsewhere. Linebacker, you can make a case for cutting Zaire Franklin $7.5 million, especially if he's your third linebacker, to cut some costs there, to possibly try to get one of those other defensive linemen on it. But that's whatever. But the final player to make it is Talan Huanga. And this is one where if we're going to be cutting cost, because of the concerns about the wrist injury, which granted, not as concerning as lower leg injuries. So that's why I'm not cutting Zaire Franklin for Dre Greenlaw. Coming off an Achilles injury. He looked rough on his 34 snaps with his movement, dealing with a lower body injury now. Not as concerned with Talan Huanga coming off a wrist injury. He looked fine moving earlier when he was coming off a ACL or an Achilles. So not concerned about Huanga with that. I would still be looking at cutting some costs and moving costs around and getting Brandon Jones in there over Huanga. Kyle Hamilton, Kirby Joseph, Cameron Kinchins, they are all very fitting safeties to be on that. They are all very good safeties, all have very clear roles. I think Huanga with Hamilton it is a little bit redundant. I think Brandon Jones offers up a little bit of a difference for what they have. So, I mean, 3.4 million in salary cap for Talan Huanga, 9 million for Brandon Jones. So that's a lot of money that you got to sit there and adjust around and move around. But that is one area where I would make the adjustment. But still, Talan Huanga making it, that's great.
I definitely agree with you on that. And like Brandon Jones with the ability to play the single high role, and he showed a lot better than what I actually thought he did last season, according to all the major analytics. But the big thing here is shouting out Talan Huanga, who, the injuries with the ACL, the wrist injury the last couple of seasons, this is according to Blaine here. He proved his ability to contribute across the board with 4 picks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 sacks while earning a first-team All-Pro nod in 2022. This is a versatile defensive player that you can bring into. I agree with you. He's a little bit redundant with Kyle Hamilton and Cameron Kinchins there. But, I mean, to get another Bronco on this list, man, it feels really good. And like I've alluded to a couple different times before we get out of here, it goes back to what we talked about last week. George Paton and Sean Payton and their ability to understand what this roster needs to bring in players that provide definite value with high quality play on the backside of that is just remarkable. And George Paton is absolutely deserving of a contract extension coming up here very, very soon. Like, again, Ryan Pace just got extended the other day, today, literally today, he got a contract extension, 2-year deal to pair him with Ben Johnson for the next, I think, 5 years. George Paton has a better track record than Ryan Pace has ever even thought of having. And this list here alone should prove that exact fact. Like, why George Paton doesn't have a contract extension coming into training camp is going to be beyond me. Like, it needs to be done now. Like, now.
Yeah. And Todd Osendorf coming in with one final comment before we get out of here, saying may not be there, but you can include Will Lutz. Guy has been great for the Broncos. The issue is Will Lutz costs like almost $6 million in salary cap space. Brandon Aubrey, who is the guy who made it for kicker, only costs $1.03 million and is a better kicker than Will Lutz.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, that's gonna have to do it for us. I apologize for such the short notice or such the short show. I did make prior arrangements today that partially because I forgot that today was Friday when I made them. Unfortunately, part of that was, the Saturday show last week. It's kind of thrown my whole week off. So next week we'll be back to doing maybe not an hour, but we'll be back to at least 45-minute shows, and we'll be at that for the rest of the season, for the rest of the year. But let's have to get out of here early. I apologize again for that. Paul coming in saying 29th minute, boo Iowa, and Todd saying good night, everyone. Have a great weekend. Yes, have a great weekend. But before we get out of here, do have some final words that we gotta say. One, make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Those are just like a matter of a few seconds, and help us out with the algorithms that are ever changing and ever causing us headaches. If you are listening after the fact on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or even listening currently, you can go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some swag. I said swag here each month. I hate saying swag. I always want to go and edit this. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with an underscore between mile and high and huddle. You can go to mhhmerch.com to get your gear on, not swag, but gear. You can get hats like this one, and obviously the one that Lance is wearing, since they're the same. You can get shirts, mugs, all sorts of stuff over there. if you are able to financially do so, which I know is difficult in these current times. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/milehighhuddlepod and facebook.com/milehighhuddle, and on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at milehighhuddle, at mhhpod, and at DVDD_pod, as well as following us individually on there at Erick, Trickel, and at Lance S_MHH. This is one of the many Mile High Huddle podcasts that come to you almost every single day of the week now, with the exception of Saturdays. And on 2 mornings out of the week, I will be live, barring a last minute change to my morning schedule on Monday, like this last week. I will be live on Monday. Thank you all for coming in. Hope you guys have, before we get out of here though, Lance, any final words?
No, not a lot. I really want to dive into some questions going into this, going into training camp next week. Like that, to me, I think is the proper topic that we need to get to. We got a handful of them in this episode, but at the same time, it's always great to be here on a Friday evening. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos.
Yes, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive. Call an Uber, call a taxi, call a friend, whatever it is. And as always, as my good friend Nick and says, make sure you choose kindness, compassion, and of course, go Broncos.